Most men don't realize the first thing that makes a woman lose respect for them isn't weakness, or failure, or lack of money. It's something far quieter, something they've been trained to do since childhood. They explain themselves, every thought, every intention, every move they make. They overtalk to avoid conflict. They justify their emotions. They try to make her understand. They give long speeches hoping she'll approve, agree, or at least not get upset. And here's the truth men hate admitting. That impulse doesn't come from love. It comes from a wound built from years of walking on eggshells, years of trying to be the good man, years of believing that if he can just explain himself enough, she won't abandon him. But women feel that desperation instantly. Not because they're cruel, but because they're biologically wired to sense the difference between a man who speaks from grounded certainty and a man who speaks from fear. The moment a man starts over-explaining, she doesn't hear clarity. She hears submission. She hears a man trying to earn space in his own relationship. She hears a man negotiating for emotional permission. That's why the dynamic collapses so fast, because explaining yourself doesn't soften the tension. It doesn't build connection. It doesn't create trust. Explaining is not communication. Explaining is submission. And the moment a woman feels that, her behavior shifts in ways he never sees coming. A woman rarely withdraws suddenly. It almost never happens in one dramatic moment. It starts with something subtle, a soft test. She asks a small question with a tilted head. She challenges a minor decision with a playful tone. She pushes lightly on a boundary just to feel your response. And instead of standing firm, most men crumble. They rush into explanations. They defend themselves like they're on trial. They give long stories, long reasons, long justifications for choices that needed no justification. What they don't realize is this: she isn't testing your logic. She's testing your core. And the second you start talking from fear instead of certainty, something inside her shifts. You don't see it. You don't hear it. She doesn't say a word, but her respect drops. Silently. Just an inch. Just enough for the attraction to dim, because she's not listening to your words. She's listening to the vibration driving those words. Your explanations tell her exactly what she needs to know. You're not grounded. You're not centered. You're not leading, you're reacting. And that's when the invisible slide begins. The messages get shorter. The tone gets colder. The patience gets thinner. You start to feel her slipping away, but you don't know why. You think you said the wrong thing. But it was never what you said. She doesn't lose interest because of your explanation. She loses interest because of the energy behind it. A man who speaks from clarity creates attraction. A man who speaks from insecurity dissolves it. And most men never even realize which one they're being. Women don't lose respect because of one big mistake. It's the quiet, almost invisible behaviors men don't notice. But women always do. She sees it when you explain why you're busy. Not a simple, grounded, I'm tied up right now, but a full breakdown of your day, your schedule, your reasons, your guilt. She sees it when you justify a decision you already made. You tell her why you chose the restaurant, why you said no to a plan, why you need time alone, as if your choices need permission to exist. She sees it when you over-clarify your feelings, explaining your intentions 3 different ways, hoping she doesn't misunderstand you, hoping she doesn't get upset. She sees it when you check in too much. Not out of care, but out of fear she might be slipping away. She even sees it when you preemptively defend yourself, answering questions she never asked, trying to control her interpretation before she even forms one. These micro-behaviors create one powerful subconscious signal in her mind: instability. Not emotional instability, but masculine instability, a lack of inner solidity. A man who doesn't trust his own decisions, a man who fears being misunderstood, a man who needs reassurance more than he offers direction to her subconscious. Over-explanation equals one thing: he's not sure of himself. And the moment she feels that, her attraction doesn't argue, it just quietly recalibrates. Because a woman reads micro-behaviors faster than a man forms them. and they tell her everything she needs to know. There's an unspoken rule in male-female dynamics, one most men never realise they're violating. Women don't want men who explain every move. They want men whose actions come from internal authority. Internal authority isn't loud. It isn't controlling. It isn't ego. It's the quiet confidence of a man who knows why he acts and doesn't need anyone, not even her, to validate it. It looks like decisions made without panic, boundaries set without essays, choices delivered with calm, not apologies, a man rooted in his own centre, not seeking reassurance for every step he takes. Because the moment you start explaining yourself, you reveal something you didn't intend to reveal: doubt. Explaining is rarely about clarity, it's almost always about insecurity. A man who feels unsteady tries to stabilise himself through her understanding. But here's how it plays out in real time. She asks a simple, neutral question like, "Why didn't you answer earlier?" A grounded man was busy. A man without internal authority launches into a paragraph, his schedule, his intentions, his reasons, his nervous need to be seen correctly, and her subconscious translates the whole thing into one brutal conclusion. He doesn't trust himself. That's the hidden contract, and most men break it without ever knowing why she pulled back. Men don't start life as over-explainers. They're trained into it, slowly, subtly, repeatedly. From childhood, boys are taught one message over and over. Your feelings are only acceptable if you can justify them. A boy says he's upset. Parents ask why instead of acknowledging that he is. If he can't articulate the perfect reason, he's told he's overreacting. A boy disagrees. Teachers demand explanations, proof, acceptable logic. If he can't deliver it clearly enough, he's labelled difficult. A boy sets a boundary. Family members pressure him to be polite, be flexible, don't make people uncomfortable. His no is only respected when accompanied by a long justification. What does that create? A man who believes, "I must explain myself or I'll be punished," misunderstood, or rejected, and society reinforces it. Men are told to control themselves, not cause trouble, make sure everyone is okay, while women's expressions are given more space and emotional legitimacy. So he grows up internalizing a survival pattern. Over-explain, avoid conflict. Over-explain, earn approval. Over-explain, stay safe. By adulthood, this conditioning is automatic. He doesn't explain because he's weak. He explains because he was taught that being understood is the only way to be accepted. And this is the tragic irony. The very behaviour that once protected him is the same behaviour that destroys his presence in relationships today. Picture this. He finally meets a woman he genuinely likes. He wants to get it right, so he leads with the only strategy he's ever known. She asks a simple question: "Why didn't you text last night?" And instantly, the wound activates. He rushes into explanation mode. "I was busy. I had to finish something. My phone died. I didn't want you to think I was ignoring you. I just didn't want to bother you if you were tired." She wasn't upset, she was curious. But now she's overwhelmed. He feels her energy shift. Her tone softens, her interest dips. Something closes. She pulls back, just slightly, and he panics. So he explains even more. He tries to clarify what he meant, why he acted that way, how he didn't intend anything negative. He thinks more clarity will fix her reaction. But for her, every extra sentence confirms one thing. This man is unstable inside. Not dramatic, not dangerous, just unsure of himself. She withdraws a little more, he senses it, he compensates harder, he starts walking on emotional eggshells, over-texting, over-talking, over-fixing, and she loses attraction without ever saying a word. He ends up confused, hurt, and rejected because he can't identify the real issue. All he knows is, "I cared, and she left." Meanwhile, the pattern keeps repeating, relationship after relationship, year after year, because no one ever told him the truth. She didn't leave because he was honest. She left because he was explaining himself like a man who doesn't trust his own choices. Here's the part most men never hear. When you explain yourself too much, she doesn't interpret it as kindness. She interprets it as leaking uncertainty. Biologically, masculine energy is built on one core signal: certainty. A man who moves with conviction calms a woman's nervous system. A man who second-guesses himself activates her anxiety. Psychologically, the polarity is even sharper. Masculine energy is directional. It moves forward, it decides, it stabilizes. Feminine energy is responsive. It feels, reacts, expands. When you start over-explaining, you flip the polarity. You become reactive. You start seeking emotional permission. And in that moment, she feels the weight shift. I'm leading, he's following. Her nervous system doesn't interpret this logically. It reacts instinctively. Anxiety. Why is he unsure? Irritation. Why is he trying to convince me? Withdrawal. Why don't I feel safe with him? She doesn't think, he's explaining because he cares. She only feels the energetic truth. He's explaining because he's unsure. And uncertainty in a man hits women like a cold wind. Subtle, but unmistakable. It makes her guard rise, her attraction fade, and her respect shift from curiosity to caution. This is why a man can say all the right words and still lose her. Not because of the message, but because of the energy behind it. Now picture the opposite man, the one who doesn't justify himself, doesn't rush, doesn't scramble for approval. He's calm, centered, economical with his words. He speaks once, clearly, and then he lets silence do the rest. No disclaimers, no paragraphs, no emotional footnotes to soften his choices. His actions come from an internal compass, not from fear, not from insecurity, not from trying to manage her reactions. He moves because he decided, not because he needs validation. And watch what happens around him. Women soften, their voices lower, their energy becomes more feminine, more receptive, more curious. They lean in because he isn't leaning out of himself. He's anchored, he's present, he's not performing. Give them the exact same scenario and observe the difference. Scene comparison. She asks both men the same question. Are you still going out tonight? The explaining man says, yeah, but only for a bit. I mean, I already told my friends I would come. I don't want to cancel last minute. But if you need me, I can skip it. I don't mind. I just thought it'd be okay. I didn't think it'd bother you. She feels tension. Something's off. The grounded man says, yeah, I am. Then he holds eye contact. Calm. Steady. She feels herself relax, even if she doesn't love the answer. Because women don't trust explanations. They trust certainty. There's a moment most men never use. The moment before they speak. That tiny pocket of silence where certainty either forms or collapses. Deliberate silence isn't avoidance. It's authority. It's a man choosing to respond from composure instead of fear. Most men rush to fill the space because they're terrified of how she'll interpret it. But feminine energy naturally expands into whatever space you create. If you fill it with nervous explaining, she feels your instability. If you fill it with calm silence, she feels your groundedness. This is where masculine power returns. When you stop reacting instantly. When you stop scrambling to soothe. When you stop racing to justify your every move. You give her nervous system something rare. A man who doesn't need her approval before he speaks. And suddenly, the entire dynamic shifts. Example. She asks, why didn't you call? The explaining man panics, opens a verbal floodgate, and apologizes for scenarios she didn't even accuse him of. Her respect drops. But the grounded man, he breathes, he waits a second, then says, steady, unbothered. I was busy, and nothing more. No apology tour, no emotional acrobatics, no over-explanation to make her feel better. That silence after his sentence, that's where the power is. That's where attraction resets. That's where she feels the difference between a boy seeking approval and a man living from authority. When a man stops explaining himself, the shift in her behavior is almost immediate. Not because she's scared, but because her nervous system finally feels something solid to respond to. Before, she pushes because she senses softness. She tests because she feels uncertainty. She questions because she's searching for the edges of his identity. She demands explanations because she subconsciously knows he'll give them, and that gives her power she doesn't actually want. But when he stops over-explaining, everything changes. Her body relaxes, her tone softens, her words become slower, warmer. She stops trying to control the dynamic and instead aligns with it. The feminine doesn't fight a grounded masculine frame. It orients around it. Here are a few mini examples. Example 1. The question test before. Where were you? Who were you with? Why didn't you text? He over-explains. She grows colder, sharper. After, I was busy, delivered calmly, without emotion. She pauses, exhales, and her voice naturally softens. Oh, okay. Example 2. The emotional spiral. Before, she accuses him of not caring, and he launches into a long speech trying to reassure her. She gets more emotional because his insecurity fuels hers. After, she spirals. He listens, steady. When he speaks, it's one clear sentence. I'm here. You're fine. She immediately settles. Example 3. The boundary moment before, she argues. He over-explains. The conflict drags on. After, he simply says, that doesn't work for me. She stops pushing and starts adjusting. When a man stops explaining, she stops fighting, because his certainty finally gives her something to trust. When a man stops explaining himself, something profound happens beneath the surface. The emotional tactics she used to rely on suddenly lose all effectiveness. Not because she's toxic, but because the feminine naturally tests where the emotional boundaries are. When he used to over-explain, those tests worked. They pulled reactions out of him. They gave her instant control, but the moment he stops feeding the cycle, the machinery collapses. The guilt trip loses power because he no longer scrambles to make her feel better. The disappointed tone loses power because he doesn't bend under it. The "why didn't you?" questions lose power because he doesn't jump into justification mode. Even the silent treatment loses power because he doesn't chase the silence. He mirrors calm back at it. Emotional pressure loses power because it has nothing to grip onto. He's no longer emotionally breathable. She can't push him around with mood swings or tone shifts, and this forces recalibration. Slowly, her internal state shifts. Respect replaces control. She realizes manipulation isn't getting the reaction it used to, so she naturally steps back into a healthier posture. She feels his stability and responds with respect instead of resistance. Curiosity replaces confrontation. Instead of cornering him with questions, she becomes genuinely curious about who he is behind the composure. Attraction replaces tension. His calmness becomes magnetic. What once triggered her irritation now triggers her desire. When he no longer explains himself, he removes the fuel from her tests, and she naturally settles into a softer, more feminine rhythm around him. Rebuilding internal authority isn't about becoming cold, stubborn, or dismissive. It's about returning to the center you abandoned years ago. Internal authority is a skill, and every man can rebuild it with deliberate practice. It starts with trusting your own decisions, even when someone disagrees, not defending them, not padding them with explanations, just choosing, and letting the choice stand as it is. Then comes feeling your emotions without narrating them. You don't need to justify sadness, stress, or frustration. You're allowed to feel what you feel without constructing a perfect explanation for why your emotions are valid because you feel them. That's enough. Next is acting without asking permission. If you want to go to the gym, go. If you need time alone, take it. If you have plans, keep them. You don't need to package your life choices into a persuasive speech. Another crucial step is allowing disagreement to exist. When she disagrees, you don't need to convert her. You don't need to defend your perspective. Internal authority means you can stand in your truth while she stands in hers, without collapsing. Finally, you must let silence exist. Not tense silence, not defensive silence, just space, breathing room, a moment to feel yourself before reacting. This is where authority is reborn, in the moments you choose not to fill with justification. Every time you choose self-trust over explanation, your internal authority grows. Every time you let silence carry the weight instead of your words, you return to your center. A masculine boundary is simple, clean, and complete. It doesn't wobble. It doesn't bend itself into justification. It doesn't need supporting paragraphs. A boundary is a statement of reality, not a request for permission. When a man says, "I'm not available tonight," that's a boundary. When he says, "I'm not available tonight because I have work and then gym and then my friend asked me," that's insecurity dressed as communication. One is solid, the other is a plea for approval. Men weaken their own boundaries the moment they defend them. The second you try to make her understand, you're no longer holding a boundary, you're negotiating it. And a negotiated boundary is a boundary already lost. Women don't push boundaries because they want them to collapse. They push because they're testing the strength behind them. A boundary explained is a boundary that reveals doubt. A boundary stated and left alone communicates internal authority. You must learn to let your boundary stand unguarded. No justification, no softening, no emotional cushioning. If you're unavailable, you're unavailable. If you need space, you need space. If you've made a choice, it's already made. A man who trusts his own boundaries never defends them, because a boundary defended is a boundary weakened, and a boundary stated without explanation is a boundary respected. Women don't actually need the details. They need to feel your solidity, your explanations, your justifications, your long stories about why you did or didn't do something. None of that creates attraction. What creates attraction is the felt sense that you are anchored within yourself. A self-contained man doesn't spill his emotions everywhere. He doesn't rush to clarify his intentions. He doesn't narrate his every move. His energy is compact, steady, and grounded. And that grounding is what a woman's nervous system responds to. This kind of man radiates confidence without trying, stability without announcing it, direction without over-explaining it, calm presence without performing it. He isn't withholding. He's simply whole. He doesn't need external validation to feel centered. He doesn't need agreement to feel right. His power comes from an internal orientation. I know who I am, and I trust my decisions. On a primal level, women are drawn to this containment. It signals protection, capability, and psychological strength. The feminine instinctively orients toward what feels steady, and withdraws from what feels scattered. When a man is self-contained, a woman relaxes into her femininity. Her guard lowers, her tone softens, her attraction deepens. Because the truth is simple, a man who holds himself creates a space where a woman wants to come closer. When a man stops over-explaining, something subtle but powerful happens inside a woman. She no longer feels the need to step into the masculine role. The instinct to interrogate, push, or lead begins to dissolve because she finally feels the presence of a man who is rooted, not reactive. Explaining puts her in the masculine position, the evaluator, the judge, the decision maker. It forces her to analyze instead of feel. But when he speaks simply, directly, and without justification, her system relaxes. She no longer has to figure him out. She no longer has to test to find his center. She no longer feels the burden of steering the emotional dynamic. Instead, she shifts naturally into the feminine, more receptive, more trusting, more emotionally opened, more connected to her softness. This shift isn't conscious, it's biological and psychological. Her body recognizes stability and responds with surrender. Her mind stops defending. Her energy becomes warmer, lighter, more aligned. And without a single speech or argument, the entire relationship rewires itself. Because when he returns to his masculine center, she finally feels safe to return to her feminine. There comes a moment when a man finally gets tired of defending himself, tired of explaining every move, tired of seeking approval he never truly needed. And in that moment, something inside him shifts. He stops over-talking. He stops justifying. He stops bending himself into shapes just to avoid disappointing someone. He becomes quieter, but stronger, simpler, but more powerful, less reactive, but far more intentional. And the irony? The moment he stops chasing validation is the same moment she becomes drawn in. Her energy softens, her curiosity rises, her respect returns. She senses the groundedness in him, the man who stands on his own decisions, his own truth, his own internal authority. This is the transformation most men never realize they're capable of. The shift from anxious explanation to calm embodiment, from needing to be understood to simply being. And the final punchline, the truth that ties everything together. When you stop explaining yourself, she finally meets the man you were always meant to be.